What's up, guys? Techmaster back with another video. So Apple had their May event, May 7th. They released the iPad Air 6th generation with a 13-inch size plus a crazy update, the M4 iPad Pro. That is insane. They released it before the Mac, which is also pretty insane to figure out. So, in terms of the specs, we have a 13-inch M2 MacBook Air, iPad Air, at 13-inch M2 iPad Air now. Sorry, I'm so used to saying MacBook Air. We have the 11-inch size. We also have the M4 13-inch iPad Pro and the 11-inch iPad Pro M4. But see, M2, M4, the M, sorry, the M4 is actually $200 more. So keep in mind, this is a $1,000 iPad. This is a $600 one. The great news with the iPad Air, though, is that this is actually a killer value because we have 128 gigs for $599 with, again, an M2 chip, everything, and the 13-inch size is $799. That's like $300 less than the last iPad Pro. So keep that in mind. 800. Let me actually see what the iPad Pro is for the M4. $1299. That's a crazy difference. That's like a $500 price difference practically. So yeah, keep in mind the Air is a great buy this year. So they also have the iPad 10 they reduced it by $100. Keep in mind that this has the older A14 chip. So yeah, in terms of the specs, so the iPad Pro has a 11-inch screen. Now, this is a crazy part. There's an OLED screen on the iPad Pro for the first time. We have ProMotion, P3 wide color, same stuff. The iPad Air has a liquid retina display with no ProMotion, but it has pretty much everything else. We have the M2 chip in the iPad Air, obviously, 10-core GPU. The M4, though, has a 10-core CPU and a 10-core GPU. So the M4, they brought it before the Mac. They brought it into the iPad. Now, this is one other thing. They removed the ultra-wide camera from the iPad Pro. So we just have a single 12-megapixel camera. It can shoot in ProRes versus a 12-megapixel regular camera on the iPad Air. 10th gen obviously just has the regular one. Oh, yeah, and then the iPad 10 has an A14 chip and then a liquid retina display, just sRGB color, nothing super crazy. Now, they all get the landscape 12-megapixel camera, so that is nice. All have USB-C connectors. Pro has Thunderbolt USB 4, Face ID on the iPad Pro, Touch ID on the power button for the 10th gen and 11-inch iPad Air, and 13-inch for that matter. We have 4 speakers on the iPad Pro, landscape stereo speakers on the iPad Air and 10th gen. Wi-Fi 6E on the iPad Air for the first time, and on the Pro, regular Wi-Fi 6 on the iPad 10. 5G cellular on all of them. Now, the iPad 10 only supports the Apple Pencil USB-C, and then the new Apple Pencil Pro just came out, so that'll also be compatible with the iPad Air and the iPad Pro. Magic Keyboard, all that stuff. The Air's great because it has 128 and it goes up to 1 terabyte of storage. Like, that's actually crazy to me because you can get a 1 terabyte iPad Air for $1,100. Think about that. The iPad Pro, I'm looking at right now, even the 11-inch one that's the 13-inch model, sorry. You can get the really nice space box. It's $500, $500 less for the iPad Air with the same terabyte of storage. Like, that's kind of a crazy thing to think about. Keep in mind the old iPad Air, which is the one I have, the M1, that had 256 and 64 at the base. So keep in mind, you can get a really nice iPad Air for $600, same price, with 128. So that's nice. And if you really need 1 terabyte, it's not crazy like the iPad Pro used to be. So again, we have the M2 chip, and M2, by the way, is more than powerful enough. Oh, wow, yeah. I did not realize. Sorry. But yeah, 9-core CPU, 10-core GPU for the iPad Pro models, 120 gigabytes memory bandwidth, whatever. Pretty much the same stuff, but power and battery are the same. Keyboards, video recording. They're all 5G, obviously. They're all sub 6, which I'm not even sure why. The iPad Pro actually used to have millimeter wave. I'm not even sure why I did that. I don't know if they removed it or whatever. But anyway, guys, so what's my opinion? To be completely honest, I think the iPad Air is actually a really good value this year. Like, way better than any previous year. I'm not going to upgrade, obviously, because I already have the M1 chip. The M2 is not a crazy jump. But with the extra storage, the beautiful selection of colors, the 13-inch size, the option to go 1 terabyte, you have Wi Fi 6E, pretty much the same display. Um, you know, much better storage, obviously 5G. Everything of the iPad Air is awesome, and the fact that you have the 13-inch size for create not much is actually really nice. Or for $7.99, sorry, I don't know why I said not much, but yeah, the iPad Air is a great value this year. Now we have the 10th generation iPad at $350, still comes with 64 gigs, and it's $4.99 for cellular, and then let's see. I'm just checking the price quickly. 256 and 649 for cellular. So is it worth spending the extra $100 on the iPad Air? Absolutely. The 10th generation iPad, I would pretty much only get the base model unless you really need a iPad with a lot of storage for not much. But the differences in the iPad Air and the iPad 10 will be noticeable. You have the much better display with P3 wide color. You have the much faster M2 chip. You have Wi-Fi 6E, better Apple Pencil support, keyboards, more storage options, much better display, as I said. You'll notice a bunch of differences. So yeah, it is definitely worth getting the iPad Air over the iPad 10, particularly if you don't need 256. It's $100 more for the iPad Air with 128 versus 256 iPad with cellular. So if you want like a 5G model, the iPad Air is only $100 more and all the other benefits you get. If you don't need 256 gigabytes, then it's a pretty good value. I mean, if you just want 64 gigabytes, I would just honestly just go for the iPad 10 because it's 500 versus 749. But yeah, for the regular, Wi-Fi cellular, the iPad Air, even with cellular, is a great buy. And as for the M4 iPad Pro, this is definitely worth it, but only if you need the most pro level processor of all time. Like M4 is not even on the Mac yet. This is a $1,000 iPad. Again, you get this really nice space black, like the other models, or the other MacBook Pros. So like the M3 Pro version. But yeah, keep in mind this is a $1,000 iPad. You get the M4 chip, and that's awesome. But if you don't need the M4, I would just go for the iPad Air with the M2 chip. And if you really want it even cheaper for like $400, instead of getting the iPad 10, to be honest, I would even get a refurbished M1 iPad Air because those are $400 in the used market, and you could buy a 256 gig version for I actually think less, or the same price maybe as a iPad Air 5. But yeah, the iPad Air 5, in my opinion, is a way better buy than the iPad 10 because you still get most of the same benefits as the new one. And as I said, the iPad Air 5 with the M1 is so awesome. I've never had any performance issues. I would just get that one because it will last longer than this iPad 10 that's not similarly priced, but it's around the same price. Again, I've seen the iPad Air 5 for like $450, and you can get a 256 gig version for like $545. I've seen it for on Amazon. That's a really good deal. Like, that's actually nothing to beat. Like, that is awesome. So the point is, though, in my opinion, the iPad Air is probably the best value. I think the M4 is good, but only if you need that extra performance. So yeah, that pretty much covers it up. I'll see you guys in the next one.